All right, thanks again for joining us here on the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. I wasn't joking, but I said this before we hit the record button. You know, this is kind of like talking to track and field royalty with our guest today. There's so many roles that I could tell you about today's guest: Olympian, world record holder, Jesse Owens Award winner, Hall of Fame. I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many Hall of Fames, just so many roles that this gentleman has held in the past and currently, and just so excited to talk about those and so much more today. Please help me welcome triple jumper extraordinaire, Mr. Willie Banks. How are you, sir?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mike. It's a pleasure to be on the show, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Awesome. I did something that I told myself I wasn't going to do. I just called you triple jumper extraordinaire, and I wanted to stay away from that because I don't want to pigeonhole you. You are so much more than the event of triple jump, although maybe that's how most track people know you, but you're so much more than that. So I'm going to redo it. Here we go. Help me welcome Willie Banks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure.
Awesome, man. So why don't we start? There's so many avenues we could go with you, Willie. You're such an interesting person with the many different avenues that you've done. Not only, again, like we talked about, like I mentioned in the intro, not only just the sport of track and field, but other charities and things like that you do, which are amazing. Why don't we start with maybe jumping our way back machine here, go back to, you're a California kid through and through. It seems like you're born there, went to school there. Talk to us about maybe high school in regards to how'd you get into track, what attracted it to you, and let's go from there.
First off, thank you again, Mike. And I just want to make sure you understand, if you give me a wide open topic, I can talk this whole hour and a half like that, boy. Anyway, I'll try and condense all my stories. I have
all good. We're here for him. We're here for him.
So, you know, of course, growing up in California, we were very lucky to have, year-round great weather. And I was very, just like now, I was an excitable type of kid. And actually, my parents thought there was something wrong with me, because I had two brothers and two sisters, and they were normal, just, doing whatever. I was jumping off of buildings and climbing up and jumping out of trees and setting up, things and jumping on those. And my parents, they didn't understand why I was jumping around. So they took me to a psychiatrist and they said, "What is wrong with this child?" And I went through the whole battery of tests and whatnot. And fortunately, I had a smart psychiatrist, I think, because he said, "Listen, there's nothing really wrong with him. He's just active. You just got to get him tired. So put him into sports." Now, my parents weren't rich. My father was a sergeant in the military. So he was used to drilling guys. So, of course, it was get up early in the morning and go work in the yard. But that was, you'd finish the yard work, and then I had a whole day of, craziness. So essentially what he did was they had programs on the military base that were free. So I did baseball, softball, horseback riding, golf, tennis, you name it. I was out doing it. And so I had that ability, and so I did get tired and I settled down. I mean, every day in school, I would cry and they couldn't figure it out. And it was because of that. Once I got tired and relaxed, I didn't cry anymore.
Because you were like confined to a desk?
Well, yeah, I was confined to a desk, and I was one of those kids who was like, ooh, pick me, And so when I wasn't picked, I get frustrated. And I was like, ah. And so eventually I would, just, and so eventually that went away as I got more and more into sports. So that calmed me down. And then track started, I guess, when I was in 6th grade, and they had, the Optimist Club. They're like Rotarians, mm-hmm. Rotary Club.
Right.
So they had a track meet at the high school every year, and Oceanside High School. So I went to that competition with a friend. He said, "Hey, come on, let's go try it." So I went and tried it, and I finished second in 2 events and third. I finished second in the high jump, second in the long jump, and third in the 50 or something like that.
Just off of seeing someone else doing it, you just did it. No coaching, no
coaching, no nothing. It was just fun. It was a kid thing, right? Yeah. Play.
Right.
And I thought they gave me 3 ribbons, and I was like, that's it. That's all I wanted to do.
Really?
3 ribbons changed my life. I was like, I am going to do this. So junior high came, and I was very fortunate that, I lived in Oceanside, which was a fairly um, multicultural community. And we had all different types of kids going to my junior high school. That was 7th and 8th grade. And the coach one day sat us down, and there was one kid from the high school that came and talked about the high jump. And I was like, okay. So I watched this guy, and he talked about the high jump and how it's done. And at that time, there wasn't a Fosbury flop, it was the straddle.
Right.
And he said that he had jumped 7 feet. And I was like, what?
Yeah, right.
And he was a high schooler. So I said, oh, I've got to see this. So I asked my parents. I went to the high school for a track meet, and I watched the high jump. And everybody was jumping. They started 5'8" or 5'6" or something. By 6'2", everybody was out, and that guy hadn't even started. And I was like, I came up here, and he's not even going to do the event? So the judge walks over to this one guy with a hood on and starts talking to him, and he pulls the hood off. There he is. Oh, my God. I can't believe it. Why didn't he jump? And he stood up, he shook himself a little bit, he went over and jumped 6'2" without even taking his sweats off. I was like, I
Wow.
want to be that guy. That's the guy I want to be. His name is Jerry
Wow.
Culp, one of the first high schoolers ever to jump 7 feet. And
Yeah.
I wanted to be him because I thought that was the coolest thing. Everybody's out. He could put it up to 6'6" and jump over with sweats. Oh, that was so awesome. So that got me started in track and field, really loving the fact that it can be cool and how cool it was. So I did the high jump, and then I started the triple jump my third year in high school, because they didn't have the triple jump in
Yeah, I was
California.
wondering. Right, right, right. Yeah.
They had it in certain areas. I think in Northern California they had it. I lived in San Diego, so they didn't have it here.
But it
But they
wasn't
introduced it.
as widespread as it is now, where almost every state, we still have some states that don't have it, which is, I just can't
I
believe in
know.
2020 we have states that don't have the triple jump, for crying out loud.
Can you
But
believe it?
yeah,
Backwards day.
right, exactly. But back then it was still hit or miss on who thought they could coach it or have athletes to do it.
Absolutely. And I was very fortunate because I started the triple jump. They showed us how to do it, and I was good at it. But I had a history teacher, and he asked me one day, "What are you doing out in track and field?" I said, "Well, I'm doing these events and the triple jump." He goes, "Oh, wow. Well, I used to do the triple jump, and I'm kind of a little bit of a crazy guy." And I looked at him like, he must have been probably 40, high 40s or something, maybe 44. I don't know. And I was like, I looked at him like, oh man, come on, dude. All right, I'm the best in the league right now. And he said, well, maybe I can come out and show you something. And I was like, whatever. So he came out and he watched me do the triple jump, and he said, well, you're doing it wrong. And I was like, look, I'm winning. And he goes, no, 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 I can help you go further. So he showed me how to go, hop and then a long step rather than that hop, skip, jump. Long, 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 each one. And he showed me how to do it. And from that time on, I won everything without even trying, because no one knew how to do it right.
What
Well,
were
it turns
you
out
what were you roughly jumping before, and then what were you
I
roughly
was
jumping
jumping
after?
like 36,
Uh-huh.
39. And after he showed me, I was jumping 45, 46,
Oh,
47.
wow. Yeah,
And then
huge.
that first year, I finished with a 49-foot 1-inch jump. And it was
Holy
just because
cow.
I was the only, and I won the state meet, and it was only, because that guy knew. Well, it turns out he was the NC2A champion back in the 40s. And the only reason he didn't go to the Olympic Games is because he didn't have we didn't have the Olympic Games because of the war.
Oh, wow.
So 42 and 40, let's see, 40, 44, we didn't have the games. 40 and 44, we didn't have the games. And he would have gone in 44.
Oh,
So I was,
wow.
again, lucky.
Wow.
And
That's
then
interesting, the
from there, I
parallels
went on.
between you two as well.
So I lost once in high school, and that was in Chicago to, and I'm never gonna remember his name, but I lost once, and it was in Chicago. It was wind dated, and I was 6'3", about 140 pounds, trying to jump into a wind. It was like stupid. It was like I was going backwards. Anyway, I lost, but the following competition, I smashed him. So.
So go back, something I'm interested in. I actually was talking about this with another athlete a while ago. So you mentioned 3 ribbons that changed your life. You know, you went to that Optimist Club and you were just like, I'm hooked. Like, not only am I pretty good, like I got second, and third, but like I got something for it, right? And we talk a lot in sports in general about you know, every kid gets a trophy, those kind of things, and how that's maybe not raised up a generation today and things like that. However, and I know you got second and third in those competitions, so maybe they were ribbon worthy. But the other person I talked to, and I wish I could remember who they were a highly accomplished NCAA champion Olympic athlete that I was talking to. They also, when they were in third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade, went to a field day or an Optimist Club and got eighth or ninth, you know, and got a ribbon. And they said it changed their life. They're like, oh, wait a minute, like I'm being recognized. And it made me, you know, hearing your story on top of that, made me think, you know, this everybody gets a trophy, gets a bad rap. However, maybe there is positivity to. Now it's got to stop some point. You know, we're not going to give the 10th place Olympian a trophy or a ribbon or whatnot, but it does make me think that in the developmental years, that maybe this is the right thing to be doing until we get. Now maybe the harder question is, when do you stop doing it? But it just made me think that, because when you said, you didn't say, you know, those ribbons meant a lot to me, I put them on the wall. You said 3 ribbons changed my life. I mean, that's an incredible statement.
Well, absolutely. And I am not a fan of participant stuff. I'm
Mhm.
not, you know, I've been coaching high schoolers for many, many years now, almost 20 years. And I got to feel like it was like we were just babysitting a bunch of kids, right?
Mhm.
Instead of trying to create champions. And it's never good when a kid is being coached and expects to be great. I think the kid should want to be great. And
Mhm.
that's the difference, I think.
Yeah.
So me getting second place encouraged me to be better. Rather than getting, if I got first place, maybe I would have gone, you know, this is not challenging for me.
Right.
So I want to be. Now that was my personality. There
Mhm.
are other personalities out there, right? That, oh, I got first place. Oh, I got to do this, you know, or I got, you know, second place. I'm a failure. That's ridiculous to me.
Mhm.
You know, I never thought that way. I just thought, ooh, if I did more of this, I could get better. So I think, but just to give someone something for doing what they should do, to me is not incentivizing them to do things, you know. Uh, but if we gave them, you know, if you finished, maybe you go down to the ninth place, you know, we give everybody an award that finishes in the finals, right? Then that's an incentive. Well, this year I got ninth, next year I get sixth, next year I get, you know, and they just keep going up.
Right.
That's something different, I think.
Well, I think you definitely hit something on the head there. And again, when we're talking about kids, it's hard to know where they are, how to even teach it. I think, you know, I'm a parent of a 9 and 6-year-old. Let me tell you, I don't have the answers. But you said the difference between an athlete who strives to get better versus an athlete who expects to get better. That's an important. Those 2 words are actually fairly. They have a lot of similarities, but boy, they could not be more divergent on your attitude of improvement, whether we're talking about sports or education or what have you. At that point, yeah, that is huge. I do remember, you know, I'm a self-confessed, you know, my 5th grade year, I was in a bowling league and I was absolutely terrible, but I got a trophy. I will tell you, I did not think I was a great bowler just because, in fact, I remember looking at the trophy going, well, that's cool. You know, like I think that might've been the first one ever. So I was like, I'll start my collection with this, but it did not give me any like, oh, well, then I expect to be the Big Lebowski, or who I can't even name a bowler. But it
I
just got
know.
me thinking, you know, with you saying that, and then this other Olympian, gosh, hate that I'm blanking, of that, you know, there is value in those in certain places in certain times. I should say there's potentially value in that. But yeah, maybe, you know, once we get to high school, we got to got to have some cuts or something somewhere. There's got to be that striving for improvement. And you certainly strided improvement. You got to, did you break 50 feet in high school before you
Yeah,
went to college? You
yeah, I
did.
did. I had my best legal was a 51.6, maybe 51.2. Now that there's an internet, you can never make a mistake, right?
Right.
Wi-Fi has just ruined my life because I can never tell those big stories. Yeah, I jumped about 70 feet that day. No. So I jumped, I think it was 51.6. It might have been shorter. And then I had a windy. When that guy beat me in Chicago, the next time we jumped was in, I think it was Modesto at the Golden West.
Mm.
And I jumped 53.3 windy. So I was like, okay, I'm good. So you put the wind behind me, I can jump far. You put it in front of me, toast.
Was that Chicago meet? Was that the old Keebler, became the
It was
IPI?
the
No?
it was either Coke or Pepsi. I can't remember, but it was a
Mm.
high school. They were trying to make it a national championship,
Yeah, I
but
remember this. Yeah.
they invited people from all over, and that guy got me. And I wish I could remember his name. He's a good guy. I like him,
Yeah.
but I just can't remember his name.
Well, you mentioned the internet and Wi-Fi. We didn't have that back then. We didn't have the internet for good or bad. Did you have an understanding of where you were? And maybe you did because you got to go to Golden West and the Chicago meet, but did you kind of understand where you were in the landscape of other high schoolers, college freshmen, entering the next year?
Well, fortunately, you're a young man. There was this thing called a newspaper, and actually, they listed everybody's name, and then there was this other paper thing called Track and Field News.
Yeah.
So go in there and see what was going on. Yeah. So unfortunately, news was slow. It wasn't instantaneous like it is nowadays, but you would finish your track meet, and the first thing you do is get so the track meets were on like Fridays when I was going to be. So Saturday morning, boy, you got the newspaper and you were reading, where did I wind up? So yeah, that was, we didn't get the instant gratification that they have now, but I guess it was better than the Pony Express.
That actually has its own. Since you mentioned that, I'm gonna have to hopefully. Here's my goal: blow your mind with a fact that you didn't know. Now that's gonna be hard because not
Okay.
only does this guy have a great education, he's a JD, or I almost said a doctor. He's a lawyer. This guy's very educated. How long, Willie? No one expected this question at all. I'm sorry. When you're the host, though, I get to do whatever I want.
Do your thing, baby. Do your thing.
How long? You mentioned the Pony Express. Do you know how long the Pony Express was in business?
I do not, but
What would
I
you
would
guess?
guess. My guess would be from right before the trains got going, so maybe the 50s. So let's say sometime around 50 or 60 years.
Yeah, that's a pretty good guess. I mean, see, that's how you can tell he's educated. He actually thought about it. He had rationale. The trains. I would have never thought about all that. I'm sure I'm wrong. Like you said, the internet. So someone's going to check me. You can tweet me at Mike Cunningham. Let me know how wrong I got this. But I know I'm much closer than Mr. Banks here. Truth is, it was in business for less than a year. Isn't that
Wow,
crazy? Isn't that
that
crazy?
is amazing.
Because it's so ingrained in our culture. Like you said, you just said it off the cuff. It's like, well, it's better than the Pony Express. And it's like, yeah, that's a failed business that actually didn't even last a year because of all
Wow.
the problems they had. I'm a, shocker, I'm a podcast listener as well. And one of my favorite podcasts is Stuff You Should Know. And they talk about random subjects. And one of them was the Pony Express. And they're like, yeah, most people think it was 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It was like 3 months, 6 months, something like that. And now I get to say I taught Willie Banks something. He now knows
Yeah, thank
something
you.
new.
Thank you. I put on these camps sometimes, and there was one young lady who we ask everybody, "What is your unique talent?" And she said, "I know random facts." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "I know random facts." The way she said it was so cute. Anyway, you're like her. You
Yeah.
know random facts.
Yeah, I'm sure not as cute though. So we'll move on. um, so where'd you go after high school? Where was the stop after that?
Yeah, I was lucky. I got a chance to go to UCLA, and
Yeah.
UCLA was full of champions because they had won the national championship, the NC2A championships about 3 years in a row. They had some of the best triple jumpers of all times that came from there, including James Butts, who won the silver medal in 76. There were just some outstanding athletes. And I, as a little, freshman coming in, was like the little kid, and they took me under their wing, and some of them changed my name, just because I don't know, I don't know, they just were, that's the way it was there. You had to have a nickname, and for some reason my name became Elmer. I don't know why. No one knows that. No one
Yeah,
ever used.
I was about to say the very next question is why.
I know why. I don't know, but you're gonna have to ask Clarence Taylor, and Clarence Taylor was like the upperclassman, and I idolized that guy, right? And he just called me Elmer, and I was like, okay,
He could have called you anything. You're like, okay.
anything, yes sir,
Right.
Mr. Taylor, sir. You know.
So where were you? You come into UCLA as obviously the number one in your school, the number one in your county, the state. You are big dog triple jumper. You are not that when you come into UCLA. You may have been. You tell us, were you number 2, 3, 4 on the team roughly? But how did that work with your psyche? Did you expect to just be number one, or did you strive to, I already kind of know that answer, to become number one? How were you psychologically with these other great athletes?
Well, a little bit of a long story, but I'm going to tell it to you. So I came in, like you said, I was a nobody, but I was good because I was a state champion. And I wanted to be good, and I wanted to try hard, but there were some phenomenal athletes there. And Clarence Taylor was actually the upperclassman, and most of the great jumpers had retired, except for Clarence. And then we had a couple of other guys that were there that were just outstanding. And we had long jumpers there, and it was like, holy mackerel, look at all these NC2A champions, Olympic qualifiers, and I'm just a little knucklehead. So I was there training, trying hard, and like I said, I was not a very big guy. By the time I got to college, I was probably 150, maybe 155, a 6'3", and I was struggling to figure out, because weightlifting, I would go in and get laughed at, and I wasn't strong, I wasn't fast, I wasn't anything. So training with those guys, I was getting a little better. But the great thing is I had Coach Tom Tellez, who later became Carl Lewis's coach. And Tom sat me down and he said, don't worry about everybody else. You just worry about yourself and just do what I tell you. And so I'm like, okay. So, whatever he said, I was trying to do, and we did bounding, and then I had friends, and because I was a crazy guy, I lived in the dorms right up above the track. And every morning I would open my curtains and I'd say, there it is, that's home. And so at this time, we had different dual meets, of course, against Pac-8. Okay, there was only 8 schools in the well, there's now the Pac-12. But we had, the Arizonas, and we had the Northern Californias, we had SC, and then we had the Washingtons and the Oregons. How many is that? No, we didn't have Arizona. So it was just the coast states. Yeah, 2 from Washington, 2 from Oregon, and 4 from California, the Pac-8. So anyway, that year we were, training, and I was with a guy named Jerry Herndon, who just passed away about a month ago. And Jerry and I were training, and he was doing the long jump, and I was doing the triple jump. And I thought it would be funny to kind of mimic him in the long jump. So he did his little thing, and he would do a double hitch kick in the air and land.
That's unique, yeah.
And so I was just trying to be funny. I did it. And the coach Tellez saw me, and he goes, hey, where'd you learn how to do that? And I said, well, I just copied him. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so you thought you were in trouble, right?
He said, no, it was good. So then he got me doing the long jump. So I was doing the long and the triple. And
so did you not do any other event? You mentioned the high jump.
In high school, I did the high jump, the hurdles, the long jump, and the triple jump and sprints.
Right.
But when I say sprints, I mean like the mile relay, right? And I did it once or twice, and I hated it. Didn't want to do it anymore. So
There's a
when I got
jumper
to
for you.
UCLA, I was just a triple jumper until I mistakenly did the long jump in front of Tom Tellez.
Really?
Yeah, and he said, "You're going to do the long jump," and I said, "But I'm not very good." I had jumped 24.2 in high school, which was a good jump, but Jerry had jumped 26 feet in high school, right?
Wow.
So I was like, okay, okay. So Jerry was a year older than me, and it went on, and then came like the last dual meet. And the last dual meet is against a school called USC, and that's University of Spoiled Children.
Oh gosh.
And this was a very
Rivalry is true.
this was a very important track meet for me and for everybody, I guess. And it this meet would represent, is the last dual meet of UCLA and USC, and it represent the what we would call the championship of dual meets, the dual meet championships. We always we created this thing, right? And so we all were like really excited about it. And I remember I had a quote unquote kind of a girlfriend at the time, and we were talking. I said, you know what? I feel good about this meet tomorrow. I feel like I can do really, really well. And she was actually a year older than me. She's like, okay, freshman. And I said, no, really, I feel really good. So I remember getting into bed early and just laying there, trying to sleep. And all of a sudden, I'm smelling grass, and I'm feeling the heat, and I'm watching this competition, and I'm jumping, and I'm like, holy crap. And after the competition that I had gone through in my mind, it's like I woke up and I was sweating. I was laying in bed and I was sweating. So I took a shower, I came back to bed and went to sleep. The next day,
Wow.
I opened up and I looked at my home on the track and I said, I'm on my way down. Went down and I started warming up, and I just felt this great feeling. And UCLA gets together and they all of us run around the track together. Then we get together in like a circle, and we chant and chant and chant, and we get psyched up. And I was so excited. And the first event is usually the long jump, the pole vault, and I guess it's shot, but the field events. So on my first run, my first long jump, and again, I'm not a long jumper, I break my best record by 1.5 feet.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, that's a pretty good jump. So then, and I was jumping against the Olympic champion,
Oh, jeez.
Randy Williams, the NC2A champion, the NC2A runner-up, the best guy has ever been, all these great guys. And here I am, a stupid freshman.
Wow.
Well, I win the
What?
long jump with a jump of like 26 feet 2. And I'm like, how'd I do that?
Wow.
So I go, okay, that's not bad. So then the triple jump, I had to get ready for the triple jump. And the meet's going back and forth and back and forth. Who's going to win this meet? So I remember it came down to my last jump. I was in 4th place, and over the loudspeaker, the announcer says, Willie Banks is in 4th place. If he can go into 1st, he could win this meet for UCLA.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, what do I do? So I run over to Tom, Coach Tellez. I said, Coach, what do I do? And he looked at me, and this guy is an absolute genius. He knows me, right? He looked at me and he said, do what you do in practice.
Well,
and he walked away. I was like, what kind of coaching is that? So my shoulders dropped, and I went back to the top of the runway, and I stood and I focused, and Coach Bush, the head coach, comes over and says, son, you can win this for me, or you can lose it for me.
Oh,
So,
geez.
I was like, okay, coach. So I focused, I said a little prayer, and off to the left, I'm going, this way,
Yeah.
off to the left is the band and the cheerleaders, and of course,
Wow.
15,000 fans at a track meet.
No. 15.
15,000 fans. Look it up.
You misplaced your comma. 1,500, which would still be amazing.
1,000 fans.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. So the band starts up, the cheerleaders start to 8 clap, and I'm like,
Holy
holy crap.
cow.
And all of a sudden I hear this voice, you'll never make it. And that
What?
was, no, out of the crowd, right down front, you'll never make it. I look over, it was my hero, OJ Simpson. I was like, you're no longer my hero, dude.
Shut up.
No,
Shut up.
no. And I'm like, holy crap.
What?
I run as fast as I can. I take a hop, a skip, a jump, and I land. I fit virgin territory. I run around. I look on the thing. They're pulling it out, 52, 53, 54, 55 feet, 1 inch. I jumped like 2 feet further than I ever jumped before, and I won the track meet.
Willie. Holy crap. If you're not watching on YouTube, he is showing the article. And it's titled, it's his quote, "I couldn't imagine going 55 feet." Oh my God. Willie, I have heard and been involved in a lot of amazing stories. None of them have ever involved OJ Simpson yelling, "You'll never make it."
It was an incredible track meet.
Wow.
Those were the days when track meets meant something. If you look at that, if you look, you can see people
Oh yeah.
all the way around the track. We had, the stadium was packed. They had to shut the, keep people out. It was just an amazing.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that. Yeah. Oh my. He's showing a pic, that same article, and they have him up on their shoulders, like the stereotypical TV, the Rudy, if you will. They've got him carrying him up on their shoulders, and there are people just all aligned in the back. Willie, wait a minute. So this is your freshman year in college.
Freshman year.
Now, spoiler alert, we know the answer to this, but how does it get any better for you, my man? Holy cow.
Well, one thing that most people don't know is that Jerry Herndon and I were running for political office. And so Jerry grabs me and says, come on, man, let's do TV. So we went over and I did a political advertisement for me and Jerry.
What?
And we both won that year. It was crazy.
Was this like a student council at UCLA,
yep,
or freshman council?
Yeah, we both ran for general reps and student council, and we won. And so we had our own offices and everything. It was just insane.
Holy cow.
UCLA was the richest student government, well, the second richest. I guess Michigan had us, but we were the second in the nation. So we were handling a lot of money. It was fun.
Wow. Man. I pride myself on segues, Willie, and I'm not sure. Like, we could stop right here. That'd be the greatest story ever told on this podcast, man. Holy cow. One of the things, this is, again, I pride myself on segues. This might be a terrible segue, but something you said earlier that struck me as interesting is you said you're getting made fun of in the weight room and stuff like that. You're like, I'm not fast, I'm not strong. Well, you're jumping 55 freaking feet in front of notorious, is that the right, infamous OJ Simpson. So what was it in that what was the strongest part of your game? The only thing left is technique, I guess, and maybe mental. That we don't think about that, but that's a skill set.
There you go. I was just going to say that you'll remember when I was a young kid, they took me to a psychiatrist and he said, "What's wrong?" They said, "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." So what I realized is, and after a long time of thinking about this, I realized what my great strength was emotion. I could channel emotion. I could channel this energy that God has given us, and I can use it in ways that I could not have imagined. And I can use it, and the more I work in the realm of mental strength, the more I'm convinced that my success came with luck, of course, with technique from Tom Tellez, and with this this great strength of mind and passion that I had. And I've gone through great lengths to create ways to show people how that works. I go sometimes to events and I'll I'll bring people up and I'll show them how they can use their mind to do things if they let their mind do it. So in other words, most people, when they do things, they think consciously. And if you stop thinking and let your subconscious take over, you will do it perfectly every time if you let go. And so what I would do is let go. That's the only difference between me and someone else, is I learned how to let go. Every time you see me jump, you'll see me smile. And the first thing I say is, hope I'm funny, because that way I'm happy and I just let go and just do what my body said. It's exactly what Coach Tellez told me. And it's amazing. He said, do what you do in practice. Instead of saying, well, you need to get your hips up and listen, then I'm thinking of that. Don't think. God gave us something incredible, gave us this mind, and the mind can do things that is just unbelievable. You hear about the mother that sees their child get hit by a car and can lift that car up and get the child in. Now afterwards, they just tore up, right, their muscles, but it's the mental strength that they use in order to do those things. If they would think, I got to go over and lift up the car, they can't do it.
So is it safe to say that that ability, every one of us has the ability, but the difference is maybe some natural and unnatural, meaning some people can naturally, maybe you were just, that was a gift you were born with, that was given to you, but you were born with to easily go to that space, where other people have to really work on it?
Everyone has the same power. It's only those people who recognize it and let go. A pitcher, when she pitches, how does that pitcher always get that ball where they want it? Yeah, through training, but they can't think, well, hold my hand this way, turn it this way, do that. They can't. They've got to just throw the ball and let their body do what it needs to do. A batter can't watch the ball all the way through. They say, watch the ball. If you watch the ball, you're going to miss it because that ball is going so fast. You have to, once the ball leaves, you have to know where the ball is going to be in your body if you let go of your mind. I remember coaching a bunch of softball girls, and I was sitting there watching, and they were struggling. And the first year that I coached them, I wasn't coaching them. I was just helping a friend who was the head coach. And we lost, we were the worst. And so the next year I went back and I was working the girls out. And I saw one girl, and I don't know if this is typical to girls, but my daughter did the same thing. A lot of girls I would see would do this, and people can't see it. But what I'm doing now is I'm zoned out. They zone out. They're thinking about something else. While they're out in the outfield, they're just kind of looking up, looking around. And I'm like, pay attention, right? Pay attention. And then I started to think, wait a minute. So I took one of the girls and I took a pencil in front of her and I held it up and I dropped it. And I said, try and catch it. And I had learned this little game by playing with a boy who was fidgeting. And I started playing this game with this boy, and I said, stop thinking about the straw that I was dropping and just catch it. And once he stopped thinking about the straw, he caught it. So I did that to this girl. And I would drop it, and she caught it without thinking. I said, now think about your boyfriend, right? Think about your boyfriend. And she goes, what? And I dropped it, and she caught it. And every time she stopped thinking, she caught it. So then I said, now do that when you're when you're swinging the bat. So she stood up there and she struck once, and she looked over at me and I said, look at me. And she was looking at me and I said, now look over there. And so she looked over there and the ball came and she just hit it, bam. And the ball went. And then I said, now every time, stop looking at the ball and just react. Think of your boyfriend. And bam, our team, the coach took that, would line us all up and drop a pencil. Each person would drop a pencil. And then we'd go around a circle. The pencil would drop, they would catch it, and it went around. And people learned how to stop thinking and just catch it. We were 8th in the state that following year with the same girls.
It reminds me of, I've
He
seen,
started hitting the ball without watching it. It's just reacting to it. Bam! And the ball was going. And they stopped watching the ball. When they caught it, like a shortstop, they just caught the ball and threw it. It wasn't, I got to catch the ball. I have to pick the ball. I have to throw it to
right.
so-and-so. It was automatic. It was just boom, 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 automatic.
Have you seen this? I don't know if it's in Japan. It's one of the Asian countries. They have this. I'm gonna call it, like of a better term, a game. It looks like pins. You know, they look like nunchucks, just the one side of it, right? And there's maybe 8 of them, kind of semicircular, and you have to stay in the middle, and one will drop, and so you have to catch it, and then another, and it's random in how they do it. And you see some people. I kind of get that same. Mental image in my head. The ones that can catch them all are literally just standing, they face forward, they don't look right, they don't look left.
Nope.
They almost look like they're bored, and
Yep.
then they just, it's just reaction. And then the ones
Yep.
who can't do it are the ones who are, they look left, oh, they missed that one, now it goes over to the right, and they're all over. It makes me think of that, just the zone. Is it akin to this? We talk about being in the zone with basketball players, and I've heard it with hitters and baseball and even track. 10K guys and gals will, like, they're not thinking about the 26 laps or what have you. They're just thinking about one step in front of them, or not thinking. They're just, okay, there's a person's back in front of me, stay there, just keep going until I have to actually become maybe a little conscious for race strategy. Is it akin to that kind of zone?
It is that. It is that. It is the zone. It's when you stop thinking and let your body do what you've trained it to do. So when you're in training, you use your conscious mind. When you're competing, you use your subconscious mind. So training is to push things to your subconsciousness, right? So I train to push things to subconscious, because once it's subconscious, it's going to be done perfectly. I mean, think about it. No one thinks about blinking an eye if a bug is headed their way, right? No one thinks about the fidgeting, the opening your mouth. None of that you think about. That's all done perfectly by your subconscious. So when people ask me, I say, well, and I've asked people this, how many things can your conscious mind do okay at one time? And they maybe, and I know it's about 4 things. You can do one thing good.
Right.
But about 4 things.
Right.
I can drink this and hold a pencil and talk.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But if you let your, but the subconscious mind can do 4 million things perfectly at one time. It's like all the actions I'm doing with my hands, the movement of my lips, the blinking of my eye, the movement of my head, the movement of breathing. All these things are done subconsciously.
Okay.
And so when you're born, you don't know what you're doing. It's your subconscious. But then you're training yourself later to do what you want your subconscious to do. But then you forget about it. And the perfect example I use for people over 18 is driving a car. When you started driving a car, you were turning all kinds of ways. But then once you figured out, now you can drink, and
some of us
do emails, talk on the phone all at the same time and drive. And you're like,
that's a really good real world example, because almost all of us can think about the time that they were learning how to drive, 14, 15, 16 years old, most of us, and how, okay, I'm going to get to the right lane. Blinker, make sure I look over. And I still remember the first time I switched the lane, and I didn't think about the gradual. I didn't have experience. And so I kind of jerked it over, and my instructor was like, what the, like, dude, you got like 100 feet to do that. Relax, And now you're right. I drove into work and I probably wasn't thinking about driving at all. In fact, a bad example here is, didn't think about the semi that was next to me in the car in front of me, the car behind me. I was just driving, listening to my podcast, thinking about the day, thinking about this interview. It was just, it's one of those subconscious. So where did this start with you, Willie? You were not born with this understanding of it. Nope. Did you study psychology or something as an undergrad? Where did you begin to start thinking of this type of thinking?
Well, I think the first thing that happened was that track meet when I was laying in bed, and I realized that, I had gone through this the night before, when I was getting ready to sleep, and I went through it. So there was no need to worry, just go and do, right? And then when I really, really started to understand it was in a town called Pocatello, Idaho.
Okay.
And this young man was with his father and his sister, and he was probably, I don't know, maybe he was 9, and he was anxious. He was getting anxious and upset because we were all hungry and we were waiting in a restaurant to get fed, and it was taking longer than usual. And I was getting a little antsy and hungry too. So he was getting crazy, and I turned to him and I said, "Hey, how about we play a little game here?" I was trying to figure out what to do. So I grabbed the straw, and like I said, I was dropping this straw in front of him, and we were trying to catch it. And so that took his mind away from hunger and all that other stuff. So I was dropping it and dropping it, and I said, "Now, look at me and catch it. Look at me." And so he did, and he caught it. And then we kept doing the game and stuff. So that game ended, and I thought, how did that happen? And that's when I started to think, maybe there's something else.
Hmm.
There's something about the subconscious. And I was in a plane, and I watched a magician. They have these things. I forgot the name of, but it was on a plane. I watched a documentary. It's about musician, a magician. And then they explain that the conscious mind can do 4 things, subconscious can do 4 million things. And that's when I was like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think it's called the brain game. That's what it's called, the brain game. Have you ever seen that?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
The show is called the brain game.
Yeah. Yeah.
When
Yeah.
they
It's a game show or
described that,
whatnot. Yeah.
I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's why it worked so well.
Huh.
So I think that's how I got to it.
Similar magician, it made me think of Rick Rubin from Run DMC and Beastie Boys fame, the
Yeah.
producer. He
Yeah.
interviewed David Blaine, the magician who does the,
Yeah, I
sits in
know
an ice
David Blaine.
box for weeks and all that stuff. And that was his whole thing, was it's all about getting past what your brain thinks is the limitation. He's like, so, I'm fearful to hold my breath past 2 minutes because I see people drowned, and I'm going to drown. So you start and do it to 2 minutes 10, and then 4 minutes and 10 minutes. It also reminded me, just this weekend I was watching Home Game. Otto Bolden had talked about it on Facebook. Or no, he would talk about Losers. Same concept as far as Netflix. So,
Right.
but Home Game with all these like really like Highland games, and
Yeah.
this one game they play out in Florence, Italy, which is like the nuttiest game in the whole world. But it was free divers. So these guys
Oh
and
yeah.
gals who dive down 30, 40, 50 meters, they're holding their breath for minutes. And
Yeah.
again, it was, they didn't start by going 60 meters because they would have had to think about it, right? And
Yeah.
so they wouldn't have done it. So they just
Right.
had to like kind of take their mind elsewhere and just do. So what
Yeah.
was your undergrad? Did you undergrad in psychology or anything like that? Or is this just part of the journey as a track athlete for you?
I took a lot of psychology classes. I like psychology, but it wasn't really what I did. I think
Hmm.
for me, again, it was just my journey in track and field and experiences, just taking advantage of experiences that came to me through track and field.
Hmm.
So many gifts came out of triple jumping, which was an esoteric event, but one that I was lucky enough to be good at.
Hmm. Well, who you mentioned one just like Hall of Famer, amazing coach, right? Tom Tellez. I love that that was one of your first, college coach. I mean, that's just, come on, where does it get any better than Tom freaking Tellez here? And I love that story of, hey, just do what you did in practice. And I also very much love the antithesis there of Jim Bush coming in and saying, hey, man, you can either win or lose this for me. So I love the spectrum of coaches, and all of them have their own roles and places in the sport of track and field. Who else, as you go along in your athletic journey, obviously we're going to go to NCAAs, and we're going to finish on the podium there, and then we're going to go to the Olympics and the U.S. championships and American records, world records. Who were some coaches, and maybe in that same vein of this, I hate to pigeonhole it into psychology, but this way of thinking, this subconscious thinking, how did it maybe play out with these coaches as well?
Well, you heard about Tom. Then Jim Kiefer came after Tom. Coach Kiefer came in and right after Tom Tellez, and he and I at first didn't get along because I thought I knew everything there was to know.
Hmm.
And coming from Tom Tellez, who I thought was the greatest coach of all times, at first we had a little bit of a head bump.
Mm-hmm.
But he started teaching me things that were different. than Tom taught. And Coach Tellez was not necessarily a go in and get as strong as you can coach. He wasn't necessarily, he never really focused on my sprinting. He was technique, 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 bound, bound, bound.
Hmm.
And I was like, I got used to it and I loved it. I loved the bound and I loved the technique that we were doing. And then Coach Kiefer came in and said, okay, you're good, you're a good jumper, but we can make you better. And I was like, I'm the national junior record holder, right? And he was very patient with me. I don't know if any other coach would have been that patient, but he finally won me over. He had me in the weight room. He got me stronger. He started pushing me to run further. Instead of like a 30-meter dash and then sitting down and, being tired out, he had me doing 150s and then he had me doing 300s and four. So so, so Coach Kiefer came in and he was pushing me to be better, but the way he won me over was he started coaching lifting and doing more long runs rather than short runs. And I started seeing progress because instead of being tired after 2 or 3 jumps, I could get through all 6 jumps. And some of my jumps in the latter parts of my jumping were good, were even better than the first part. So I started to see some good improvements. And I started jumping 56 feet. And I was like, wait a minute, this is awfully good. And it was because he got me stronger.
Were you now a dual jumper? Were you
Yeah,
also doing a
I
long
did
jump?
long jump and
Yeah.
triple. In fact, back in those days, I had the best long triple record of all times until Mike Conley comes around and starts jumping.
So it's interesting too. I mean, that's a pretty different radical from Tellez to Coach Kiefer
Yeah.
of styles of coaching. Not necessarily, one yells at you versus the other, but styles of like, okay, I'm a bounding type coach, speed, agility type, where more strength based is what I'm hearing. The lifting and the longer runs, the 300s, etc. And yet you excelled in both and continue. Like maybe you needed that different for the latter half of your college career.
Absolutely. And this again is another part of the luck that I talk about. The fact that if another coach would have come in and been like Tom Tellez,
Yeah.
I probably would not have succeeded because I needed more. It's just that Tellez put me on the right track. Coach Tellez had a way. He knew the technique. He knew exactly what I needed. He knew my body, and he was going to put me in the right position to go far, and I did. Kiefer saw that, and he said, "Where can I fit my training, my coaching in?" And rather than pushing me away from what Tellez had taught me, he said, "Let me add to what he taught you." And I saw improvement, great improvement. And so that really helped. So for 3 years under his tutelage, I went to, 56 low and got closer and closer to the national record. And then he took me up to where I was ready for another jump. I was consistent at around 56, the high 55s, mid 56s. And then I started training by myself with people like Chico Freeman, Milan Tiff, and those two were amazing. They were triple jumpers, but they coached.
Is this
And
post
so,
collegiate now?
pardon?
Is this post collegiate? So you're done
This
with
was
it,
post collegiate. I was in law school,
and you're still at UCLA.
still at UCLA and UCLA Law School.
Got it.
So I was working with them, and I had actually jumped under Milan Tiff. I jumped 57 feet under Milan.
Wow.
And he was coaching also at the same time a guy named Ron Livers. And for those of you who don't know, I think Ron would have been the greatest triple jumper of all times, but for an accident that happened to Ron that took him out of track and field. Here was a guy who was maybe 5'8" at the most, legs that were longer than mine, and I'm 6'3".
Wow.
And he jumped 57 high, 57, 7.5. And he jumped 7 feet, what, 5? Something like that.
Holy cow. 5'8"?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
He was Franklin Jacobs before Franklin Jacobs was Franklin Jacobs.
wow.
And he is, I swear, the greatest. I could not beat him. He beat me twice in, national champion. He was the national champion, I think, 3 times. And of those 3 times, he beat me twice, right? And then every national championship I'd go to, Ron Livers was there. I was second, right? Like, I couldn't beat him. I jumped 57 feet. He came back and jumped 57. If I jumped 57 feet 7, he jumped 57 feet 7.5.
Wow.
So he took my mind and just threw it away. It was amazing. And it wasn't until he had an accident that I actually, broke open. Had it not been for the accident, I probably would have quit. There was no reason to continue on with this guy.
You're doing all of this, jumping at the 57 plus level while going to law school.
Yeah.
Now, I only have TV and movies to tell me not smart enough to go to law school here. This guy here, not at all, ever. Barely can spell the word lawyer. But it's a lot of hours. This isn't, a grad school is a lot. I'm amazed that when people go to grad school and MBAs and they compete at a high level, you're going to law school during this entire time. Did that interfere at all with, the results, it didn't seem like it interfered, but did it interfere with training at all?
I try not to let it, but here's where that mental thing came in and where I started to think I might have something here. So in law school, you're right, there's a lot of reading, but the way people usually study is they'll focus for a little bit and then they'll take a little, like maybe 10 minutes, they'll be like highly focused and then they'll kind of relax for a second, look around, see what's going on, and they get back at it and then they look around. But then I thought, you know what? In the triple jump, you have to focus for a long period of time and you have to be really deeply into it. And so I started training myself like I was actually triple jumping. So I would sit down and I would zone out everything, just zone everything out. And I would focus trying to say how long I could keep on the page without hearing, smelling, seeing anything. And I got better and better and better till I could sit for 3 hours and hammer through what it took most people 4.5, 5 hours, right? Because I was focused and I was retaining. So I used that and I could then take that extra hour and a half and go out and train. So it was about trying to drive things into my subconscious mind, just like I did for training. Everybody has that talent. It's just that people don't know it and don't train it.
Right.
You train that talent, you could do anything. So that's what I was doing.
So you're at 57, let's call it just under 58 feet. What was the difference and who were the coach or coaches to go from the 57-ish to the 58 and then eventually in, I believe it was 1985, where you set the world record?
So 1985, I met a guy named, I was training with a bunch of people that I really loved and enjoyed. And we were training under a guy named Chuck Divas. And so I started training kind of by myself, and he was working with us. And then his focus was on speed only. All I did was run. Run. He hardly even showed up for my jumping, really. It was mostly learn how to run, and I was sprinting. So my fastest before him was maybe 11.2, 11.3, slow. But then under him, I was able to run 10.85, which is still slow. But for me, that was speedy.
Yeah, right.
And I just was in such phenomenal shape as a runner. I'd never felt this way before. And I was able to do things that I really hadn't thought about. It was, I can't explain it, but I remember going to Hawaii as, you know, just on a holiday from training. And I went to Hawaii and there were blowholes and I saw kids jumping through them. And then they would pop up in the ocean. I did it. I just jumped in right after the kids.
What?
And I was like,
Why?
as I got in it, I was going and going, and I go, those were little kids. I'm a big old, and it was getting smaller and smaller. And I go, I might have just killed myself. And I hold my breath, and I come out and I pop up and I go, wow. But that was because mentally I was so, I don't know, I was just amazing in my head. I could do anything. I
Yeah,
thought,
yeah. You know, Willie is a guy who is very fearful of water and things like that. Yeah, there's something mental for sure on that, Willie. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm talking about with you, my man. There's something mental with you to just jump in after those kids. I know
I,
exactly what you're talking about. That's scary. Get out of here.
I would have, I could never do it again. I mean, that was, but at that time I could do anything. I felt like I could eat steel, and that, so when it came to triple jumping, I was like, this is nothing. And I just ran down and I was jumping, and when it got to 1985 at the national championships, June 16th, 1985.
Well, it's surprising
Uh,
you would remember that.
yeah, it was a great day for me, and I just felt so good. And there was when the event started, my first time I went down, and I thought I had fouled, but someone looked it up and said, no, you didn't jump. You didn't foul. You jumped like you jumped like 57.5 or something like that. And I was like, oh, really? I thought I fouled. Anyway, on my next jump, right beforehand, I had my headphones on. I was dancing around, enjoying myself. And I felt something hit me in the back of the head, and I closed my eyes. I watched myself do the triple jump, and I go, oh my gosh, God has just told me that I'm going to break the world record. And I went over to my friend Lee Balkin, the high jumper. I said, Lee, I'm going to break the world record on my next jump. You got to watch this. And I went over a couple of other people and said, you got to watch this. It's going to be the world record in the triple jump. So I stood at the top of the runway. I looked down. I didn't need to say a prayer or anything because God had already ordained that this was going to happen. I believed that. And you can watch. If you watch my jump, I ran down the runway. I took a hop, a skip, a jump, and I was looking off to the left side where the world record marker was, and it just get closer and closer and closer and closer until I had passed it. I landed. I raised my fist. I knew I broke the world record. And they pulled the tape out, and actually they gave me a centimeter more than eventually they gave me. I was 1798. Eventually it was 1797 was the official mark, which was 58 feet, 11 and a half inches. So just a half an inch shy of 59 feet and 3 centimeters short of 18 meters, which would have been,
So many questions. So many questions. Let's analyze this world record. I'm never going to have this opportunity again. Let's analyze a world record jump. I think so. Let's go through a couple of questions that popped up as you told that are just amazing. Not even story, that experience. I mean, it's just amazing. What were you listening to in your headphones? What kind of music were you listening to?
I listened to Parliament Funkadelic, not just knee deep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You said you felt a slap in the back of your head.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say a teammate popped you in the back of the head or someone was, goofing off. Was it a physical, like you felt like, I don't want to say pain, but you felt the act like,
I felt like anyone who's been shocked, it wasn't like a boom. It was like I don't know. How do you explain a vision or a an encouragement from God, right? How do you explain that?
Yeah, right,
Some people won't understand because they don't believe, but
right.
if you've ever had that experience where you've been blessed, I guess, where you've been blessed, wow, it's amazing.
You ran around to some friends and told them, "Hey, you got to watch this next jump."
Yeah.
Was it actually the very next jump?
Yeah.
Had you done that before?
Never.
And obviously not set the world record.
Never.
You weren't the boy who cried wolf.
Never, ever, ever. And I never did it afterwards either. It was, and you can call Lee Balkin and you can ask him.
Wow.
He tells the story all the time. I just literally, that's what happened.
Wow. I mean, I'm speechless, honestly. Yeah. I'm, we're all listening to you right now, and we're playing the movie that you lived in our head. Like we're seeing you at the end of the runway, and maybe you snap out. We're trying to visualize something that you felt that happened to you, and then we're seeing you run around. In our own head, we're seeing how you would run around to your friends, going, "Hey, you got to watch this next one, dude! I'm gonna set the world record,"
Right.
and then do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is literally why they made the movie Rudy. I mean, that's movie-esque. That's what we all strive. That's the fantasy we all want to live in, and it's your reality.
Yeah. I've been
Wow.
blessed too many times. And it was an amazing feeling. And I was so, I don't know, I was happy. I guess that's an understatement, but I was.
Yeah, right. Did you take any more of your jumps, or were you like, yeah, I'm good?
No, I took them all. You see, this is the difference between me and I think a lot of jumpers. I just love to jump. I just wanted to jump. And if I had given up there, that would have been, in my mind, I couldn't even imagine that.
Right.
Because I had 4 more jumps, right? I could keep going. And I jumped. I just love to jump. And you'll find that I don't even, half the times you can ask me, how far did you jump? I don't even know. I just want to jump. Just let me jump. And
Yes.
that's the way I live my jump. I mean, people go, oh, well, you never won a medal, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, dude, you understand that I had an 18, 19-year career of being known for the triple jump. Not, a lot of people have got gold medals. They're not known.
Right.
So, hey, I was blessed. There's nothing, you win a medal. If I would have won a medal, yeah, that would have been, the epitome, right? And I honor those people like Al Joyner, like Mike Conley, like Zidislaw Hoffman in the World Championships, who took my championships away, and Kenny Harrison. There are a ton of people that have gold medals. I love that. There's only 2 people that have had a world record in the last 35 years. 35 years.
When I spoke to Ashton Eaton, he expressed something very similar to that, because I asked him what meant more, a world record or the gold medal. And I assumed, as a guy who never made or ever will make the Olympics or world records and what have you, I thought, I was like, oh, it's the gold medal, like, because it's first. You went, you beat everybody on that day at their whatever their best was for the day. And he said it was actually, and it surprised me, and it sounds similar. His was the world record, because he goes, I advanced the event. Like I moved the event forward, and now someone else has, since then moved it forward. He goes, but I'm part of history that I moved the event forward. And there's very few people that do that. And so in the triple jump, same thing. In your event, you set the world record. You moved that event farther than it ever has until someone else came along. But yeah, and we're talking to one of a few people who could ever do that, where I could have a podcast of 7 or 8 people maybe of gold medalists in the triple jumps, men and women. Yeah, that's interesting. I tell you what's
isn't that interesting though, that you say that. It's like that's the exact same thing that happened to me when I woke up the next day after the world record. I woke up and I was shaken. I was literally shaken by the fact that I'm now a weirdo. I've jumped further than anybody else has ever jumped in the history of the world in the triple jump.
Yeah.
That shook me to my core. I was like shaking when I realized that. And I said, holy crap, how do you do that? So I can understand what Ashton was saying.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of world record holders who I'm friends with, and we all kind of talk about the same thing. You know, the fact that they kind of knew they were going to do it when they did it, and the fact that afterwards you just go, holy crap,
Huh.
that was something else.
I mean,
It's scary.
it's the ultimate peak on a peak on a peak, right? I mean, we have athletes, and then we have athletes that are really good. So they're at the peak of their existence and their event. And then we have this small fraternity, this other peak of Olympians. I mean, it is a small, we're not, I mean, it's amazing. We're talking about the other peak on top of that, the world record holders, again, out of all the Olympians, an even smaller subset have set world records.
Yeah.
It's just, it's again, it's that peak on peak on peak. And you have no one else to, almost no one else to, like you said, how did I do that? Who else do you get to talk to? There's not there's not 10 people you can call up and say, hey, how did you do the triple jump rope? It's
Yeah.
almost a fraternity of 2 or 3 at this point,
Yeah. Yeah.
I tell you something that was really special for me, just what happened there in the last 10 minutes, Willie. When you were talking, I asked you, did you stop jumping after you set the world record? And you said, no, man, I loved jumping. I just enjoyed jumping. And your face, and I hope if you're listening, we eventually do put these on YouTube. I'd love for you to come back, and I want you to see Willie's face there. The joy and what it reminded me of, and maybe it's because I have a 9 and 6-year-old, so I have kids, in my life. I saw you I saw you as a 9-year-old because that's how old my boy is. But when you were talking about when you were a kid and you were just so excited, I wanted to jump out of trees, I wanted to do this, and I wanted to do that. I saw Willie Banks, the kid, and Willie Banks, the 64-year-old, talking about his life experiences, the joy, passion's not even the right word, I think, in this. It's just pure joy is what I just saw in your face and heard in your voice describing, oh man, I like to jump. I just wanted to jump. That is so
Yeah.
special.
Well, I do. I love it. And even today, I still jump. I mean, I do more high jumping now because my body can't handle a lot of triple jumping, but
Right.
I will at any day, Mike Powell is a friend of mine and he's with me a lot. And he just cracks up because he remembers one time I got off a plane, I ran over to an all-comers meet, and I jumped. And he looked at me, he goes, Willie, we just got off a plane. You're 60 some odd years. What is wrong with you? I go, hey, I just want to jump. Let me just jump. So yeah, I just love to jump. It's my favorite thing to do.
Well, you're talking about jumping, of course, and before we hit the record button, one of the last coaches that we talked about, and I want to make sure we talk about him because I just hold him at just such high esteem, and I know a lot of other people do, is Mr. Randy Huntington. So when did he come into the picture and work with you?
Randy came in 1987, maybe 86, 87, and he put it all together. Randy put everything together for me. He was to me, he was almost a genius when it came to understanding the body, understanding physics, the science of what we were doing. He could put everything in terms that I understood, and he could explain things so that it wasn't just go do what I say, and he wasn't as passionate as others, because if you know Randy, he's very ethereal, everything is in his brain and he's just spouting this stuff. And maybe for some people it's not what they need, but for me, I needed somebody who could explain it. And he was willing to put up with, me, and my little eccentricities, and turn those into good things, because he could say, look, you're doing this and that's all good, but why don't you add this to it, And so we worked together. And then Mike Powell came over to me and said, hey, can I train with you guys? And at the time, he was just, some silly little kid, and I go, okay, I needed somebody to train with. It was just Randy and me. So we trained together, and so we pushed each other. And I just know that in 1988, at the Olympic trials, I jumped 59 feet 8 inches. It was wind 80, wind aided, but it was the longest jump I had ever jumped. It was the longest jump of anybody had ever jumped, right? 59. I was the first people ever to jump over 18 meters, first person, and it was all because of Randy. Now, the problem was after that, I couldn't jump anymore. You know, I had hurt myself, but during those jumps, but I had two 59-foot jumps. It was because Randy put it all together. He put the mental, the physical, you know, in terms of sprinting, in terms of strength, in terms of agility, all of it together, and boom, I was able to jump. And I swear, had I not injured my Achilles tendons, it would have been just unbelievable. 60 feet would have been easy. The way he was coaching me, it was just amazing.
Do you think, as we talk about this subconscious, and we've been talking about it, a lot of it as an athlete during your athletic career, of course. Well, actually, we talked about it during school, during the JD process, getting your law degree there. As I'm thinking about Randy, do you think it's possible that you can be a coach of subconscious? So you're not thinking about, I don't even know how to put it into words, but can we get to that as a coach to help our athletes?
I think in terms of coaching, I think the way it would work is you would be a student like Randy, where you're learning as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And then rather than just trying to, rather than just, you know, falling on one thing, you can look at something and not use your bias and be able to coach. So in other words, for me, I think people should focus on technique. And so I use that as a bias. So everything I see, there should be some technique to it, right? But there are some athletes where technique is not that big a deal. I mean, the way you take a look at, let's go back to the 200 meters and Michael Johnson. You look at his running technique, and the first thing you want to say is, well, he's doing it all wrong.
Right.
But a great coach doesn't look at that. They look at, they forget all their prejudices, look at the athlete, and then creates a program to help that athlete become better.
I love that. That is all about coaching the person, not necessarily the event. And we've been hearing that from some of the great coaches. We talked to Sue Humphreys,
Yep.
David Kaiser, Brooks Johnson mentioned that, and really like a lot of parallels from my conversation with Brooks about barrier breaking. In a lot of that subconscious subject that we talked about is that there are no barriers in the subconscious, because they can do 4 million things at once, and you know that in itself, I guess, is a barrier. But you know, we continually can use that as we work towards coaching and coaching the person, not the event.
Wow. Exactly.
Dude, as we wrap up, first of all, Willie, thank you so much, man. This is, I can't even, everybody who knows me right now is like, what's wrong with Mike? Because I never have a problem with words. This has been so awesome. You know, I talk a lot about the interviews that we do here on the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. And I talk about how I get a lot from it, because I'm getting to really dive deep into a coach and their experiences and what they've done, and I get to draw what took you 64 years. I get to learn in an hour or so. You know, I don't get the experience, but I get to learn it. It helps me. And this is one of these conversations that, you know, like me as a sales professional, as what I do here for BizDev and stuff for Gill Athletics, like there are parallels here that I'll get to use. I'll actually put into play here, which will make my serving and servitude towards the coaches of this country better. Like I get better to serve them now because of conversations like this, man. So I can never say thank you enough for just being so open and humble with me in today's talk.
Well, it was a very good talk. Thank you very much. It gave me a chance to talk a lot, actually, and to reminisce. And I love reminiscing now that I'm an older guy. You know, 64 is not a youngster anymore. I feel like it, but you know, what the heck, a lot of knowledge. Now, I can't believe you're letting me go without letting me tell my story, though.
You know, you mentioned something, but then I think I know this. Non-UCLA guy. I mean, I'm from Alabama, so you know where my allegiances are, right? Actually, I always have to make sure I shout out, I'm from Alabama. Everybody says, oh, Alabama or Auburn. I went to the greatest school. I went to the second greatest school in the country, UCLA being number one.
Thank you.
I don't want to offend our guest today. UCLA number one,
There
and
you go.
Troy University number two. Now my son's name is Troy, so that tells you how much Troy meant to me.
Yeah.
But you mentioned in that amazing story that included OJ Simpson, which I could have guessed 100 subjects we have talked about today. That guy would not have been in here at all, my top 100 guessing. But you mentioned the band was doing the 8-clap, and I forgot. I think I remember that the UCLA, their school song or traditional song is the 8-clap.
That's right.
Now, why do I bring that up? Because you are famous. The rumor is, I want to know straight for you. I want to know the truth. You are on the hot seat here. I want to know the truth. The lore out there is that you invented the clap for triple jumping, I guess specifically, but now it's used for long jump and high jump and other things. Is that true? And if that is true, where did it come from? Did it come from 8-clap? I don't know what 8-clap is for UCLA, so I don't even know if there is clapping. But so tell us about that and be real. Did you really invent it?
Well, I'm going to tell you the truth, of course. But great segue, by the way. The 8-clap. Now, that could have influenced me, and you would think it would come from the 8-clap, but actually it came from 5 drunk guys.
What?
Yep, 5 drunk Swedes. And in 1981, I had just set the American record, and I thought, man, I am about to get rich. So, back in those days, you got appearance fees for showing up, and I was like, oh man, yay, go to Europe, have a great time. And I had a manager, his name was Pete Peterson, and we went to Stockholm. And I'm gonna, you know what? Here, I'm gonna do this for you, just for you. So Pete goes with me, and he's goes in to make these he meets with the different meat promoters in this one room. And he says, he comes out and he says, Willie, I've got good news and I've got bad news. And I go,
oh boy,
tell me the bad news first. So he says, well, there's no more triple jumps after this. No one is going to have the triple jump because they're not, I don't know. There's no meet organizers who are going to have the triple jump. And I was like, I can't believe that. And I said, well, what's the good news? He said, well, I got you a long jump in Lausanne after this. So at least you got one meet before you have to go home. I was devastated, but I was angry too. So I went into this room. You're not supposed to go in, but I went in this room and I went up to the guy who had the most meets in Europe. And I said, hey, I don't understand why you're not having the triple jump. Triple jump. I come here, I just set the national record and you're not having triple jumps? What's going on? And he looked at me with a stern face. He used to be a cop. And he said, listen here, young man. You're asking me to pay you, and you're not putting butts in the seats. If butts aren't in the seats, I don't get paid, and I can't pay you. So get the hell out of here. And I was shocked. I kind of backed down and walked out, and I was shaking my scratching my head. What? I just got schooled. Number one, track and field is not about jumping. Who knew? Track and field is about putting butts in the seats. He schooled me.
Right.
So I thought to myself, I'm going to show him that a triple jump is exciting and that we can put butts in the seats. So I put up on the screen here behind me the Olympic Stadium in Stockholm. And this Olympic Stadium is where the track meet was that day.
Oh, wow.
So I went to the track meet when it was empty like this, and I just started running around the stadium. They had a little area in the back, and I just started running. And the reason why is because I was, once again, all that energy and passion was there, and I knew I couldn't use all of it. I couldn't control it. So I had to get rid of it. So about 2 hours of just warming up and stretching and dancing and running around with my headphones on. And it finally got to the time where they brought the triple jumpers out and they let us warm up. And I was warming up and getting ready, did my run throughs. And then they call us together and I said to all the guys, I said, look here, they're not having the triple jump this year for some reason. we've got to show them just how exciting the triple jump is. We're going to set national records. We're going to set European records. We might even set a world record. Come on, guys, we can do this. Maybe they didn't understand language or something, but they walked away like, what are you talking about?
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. So I was like, okay, it's going to be up to me. And the first 8 guys fouled, and I was furious. I was like, this is ridiculous. So I had my headphones on, stretching and dancing. When it was my turn, I took my sweats off, and I took my headphones off, and I usually clap my hands 3 times, 1, 2, 3, shake my fists, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm focused and I go. So that was my routine. So I clap my hands 3 times, and these 5 drunk guys to my right, and you can see on the stadium where they have the cover there on this right side, I guess is yours left side. I looked over, and these guys were, they were joking. They were laughing and clapping, mimicking what I did. So I was a little bit upset, but I said, focus. So focus, Willie. So I clapped 3 times. They clapped 3 times. I shook my fist. They clapped 3 times. I ran down and jumped. And I came back, and the jump was probably 54 feet high. So I was winning the competition, no big deal. Came back, and I put my headphones. I was dancing. These guys were just laughing at me. Foul, 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 foul. My turn again. I stood up, and these guys, they started clapping like this. And I was like, what? Okay, so I clapped 3 times, shook my fist 3 times, and I ran down, and I jumped like 55-1, new Swedish record. I was like, that's a Swedish record? It's not very good. So I go back, and these guys are clapping, congratulations. I said, thank you. My headphones on. The next time I get up, the whole section is clapping. I run down as they're clapping, and I jump 55-4.
Do they naturally do the speed up?
Yeah, they would just, every time
Just a natural.
Right?
Wow.
And I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. So I went back, put my headphones on, and I thought, wow, this is cool. And after the 3rd jump, they get rid of the guys, the least of the jumpers. So it was only 8 of us left.
I thought you meant they got rid of the drunk guys.
I don't want to say anything bad.
They kept them. Okay, good.
They kept the 8 guys. And I was still winning the competition. I don't think anybody was in close. I don't even remember who was in the competition because I was in my own world. And when I stood up for the 4th time, like 3/4 of the stadium was clapping. The far side, if you look, they didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And I said, okay. So I just stood there, and I stopped clapping 3 times. I was just shaking my fist to the clapping.
Right.
And I ran down. I jumped almost 56 feet. And so I was progressing further and further and getting further and further out. So then I thought, I need to put some indication out near the pit. So I asked the meet organizer to put a flag at the Swedish national record, which I'd already broken, so it looks pretty cool to go by it, right? And then one at the European record and one at the world record. And the world record at the time was 58 feet 2 inches. And I was like, ooh, okay, and my best was 57 feet 7.5 inches.
Wow, okay.
Right? That was the American record. I had just set it. So I was like, okay. So I go back, and and when I stood up, everybody in the stands was clapping. Everybody now. It was like boom, boom, boom. And it was just reverberating throughout the entire stadium. I just run down as fast as I could, took a hop, a skip, a jump. I landed near the world record, and I threw my hands up like world record. And I was like, yes! Now, to tell the truth, I knew I had fouled. I fouled big time, right? My foot, you could see the foul from Mars. But I didn't care. I was going to play it up. So I was like, world record. And the guy who had the flag was shaking. His hand was shaking like crazy. That red flag came up, and he's like, damn it, why do I have to raise this red flag? And I was like, I go over to him and I'm like shaking my hand, you know, going, no way, I jumped. That was fair. Knowing, of course, I didn't. He's looking at me like, am I going to get into a fight? So I
Right.
got on my hands and knees. I looked at, of course, I knew I had fouled. I looked up at him and I said, yeah, okay, you caught me. And he just relaxed and was like, oh my God. So they raked the pit. And I said to myself, you know what? All these distance runners and sprinters, after they finish, they take a lap. They take a lap and everybody's clapping, throwing stuff at them and, you know, all happy. I said, why can't field eventers do that? We never get to do that stuff. So I said, you know what? I'm going to take a victory lap before the end. So before my last jump, I used to put my sweats on and my headphones and I started jogging real slow. And as I jogged, people would stand up, clap, and sit down. I went all the way around this stadium. And every section I came to, they would stand up and clap. The first wave in track and field.
Wow.
I finished. I took my sweats off. It was my turn. And everybody in the stands stood up. And then I just held my hands out like this. And I went, boom. And everybody at the same time was clapping it with my hands. And the reverberation around the stadium was just unbelievable, standing and clapping and stomping. And I just took off. I ran, I took a hop, a skip, a jump. I looked at where I was headed. I was headed for that world record. Oh, just missed it. But I landed and I jumped up and I was like, yeah, it was a European record, right? So it was a European record. People came out of the stands, they grabbed me, they put me on the shoulders, running me around. They gave me a microphone. Big mistake because I was just going off, right? Yes, and this was amazing, and you know, hey mom, and you know, everything. I thought this is it. My 15 seconds of fame, and I'm taking this bad boy. And it was pandemonium for a little bit. I had complete control. And then it died down. And I won that. And afterwards, I walked over to this one section where all the meet organizers were. And I looked up at him and I said to that one big guy, and I said, so what do you think? And he says, okay, you got me. I'll put a couple of triple jumps in just for
Nice.
you, okay? So long as you
Wow.
come. I said, okay, I'll be there. And I was very excited about it. So that was how the clap started.
Holy cow.
But you know that guy who used to say, and now the rest of the
Yeah,
story?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. That's what we're here for. Absolutely.
So the behind the scenes was, remember, I had that one long jump.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh man, shoot, I gotta go to Lausanne and long jump. After this great triple jump, I'm gonna long jump? Are you kidding me? I suck at the long jump. I go, okay, I'm getting paid, so I gotta go. So I went down to Lausanne, and I was long jumping. I was long jumping about 24 feet. I was getting smashed. I mean, people were killing me. And I was like, oh, this is so terrible. And on one of my jumps, somebody said, well, come on, Willie. And I turned to the crowd and I was like, put my hands up like, what do you want? And all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom. And I was like, oh my God, what did they do? Oh, they must have seen it on TV. So I stood at the top of the runway. I ran down as hard as I could, took a long jump, boom, I landed 26 feet 8 meters 11. It was a Swiss record. And I was like, where did that come from? But I
Wow.
realized at that time, it wasn't just the clapping. That was what I needed. I needed the home crowd advantage.
Right.
Everywhere I went from then on, I had the home crowd advantage. When I stood up, boom, boom,
Wow.
boom. And it just gave me, even if I felt like crap, the minute I heard that, it was like I was a star, superstar. And I could jump. I remember times when I thought, oh, that must have been a 52-foot jump. And it was 57. I was like, how did that happen? But that's the power of what in basketball, they go the sixth man,
Mhm.
home crowd advantage in football. It,
Right.
it's just the power of the audience to take you out of your consciousness and make you unconscious and make you do things that you just can't do without them. So for
Mhm.
me, it was magical, and it was the best thing that ever happened for my triple jump, and it gave me a longer career and a better career. So I thank 5 drunk Swedes.
I love that so much, man. I have to wrap this up. I know you would continue because I do want to learn more about you. Do some amazing philanthropy work. You've been on some boards. You've done USATF and do USATF work, IWF work. Make me a promise. And you're Willie freaking Banks, so you can break this promise, man. And I won't even hate on you that you will come back one day and let's tell the rest of the story. Let's tell the off the track story. Just some of the, it's amazing the story you talked about there about the clap and some of the other stuff. Like that advances our sport, like the world record that advances our sport. And, people that are competing today and people that will compete 20 years from now, they get the benefit of what you and some of the other people we've had here on the Connections podcast and many, many other people in the track and field world have battled through and created. We get the advantage of that now. And so I'd like to talk about some of the things that you've done, quote unquote, behind the scenes that we are benefiting from today. Like, I drew a very parallel there when you talked about they weren't having the triple jump. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Our athletes are fighting for that today in Diamond League that they're not doing. So like all things old or new again here. Like what in the world? So maybe there's some things we can learn from that. Willie, I love you so much, man. This was better than I could have dreamed it. I wish I would have dreamed it. This is so awesome. I'm just so thankful, man. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. This has been great for me too. I love telling old stories, and I appreciate you giving me this opportunity, and I will not break a promise. I promise you that anytime you want me to come on, you just let me know and I'll make the time to be there. Okay?
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you so much, man. Ladies and gentlemen, Willie Banks.
Thank you.